Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 5th of December 2014. My name's TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comment. Coming up in the show, Target Australia, Kmart, and a major retailer in New Zealand remove Grand Theft Auto 5 from the shelves after an online petition. All this in the OC Remix track of the day is coming your way right about now. In a statement from Target Australia, the company has said that they will stop selling the R-rated video game Grand Theft Auto 5 following feedback from its customers about the game's depiction of violence against women. This is all taken from their press release, and Target General Manager of Corporate Affairs Jim Cooper said the decision was made following extensive community and customer concern about the game. We've been speaking to many customers over recent days about the game, and there is a significant level of concern about the game's content. We've also had customer feedback in support of us selling the game, and we respect their perspective on the issue. However, we feel the decision to stop selling GTA 5 is in line with the majority view of our customers. Mr. Cooper said that Target would continue to sell other R-rated DVDs and games. While these products often contain imagery that some customers find offensive, in the vast majority of cases we believe they are appropriate products for us to sell to adult customers. However, in the case of GTA 5, they said we've listened to the strong feedback from customers and this is not a product they want us to sell. Following this, the company Kmart in Australia also pulled the game from its shelves, bearing in mind they're both owned by the same company. And in perhaps a more extreme move, the Warehouse Group in New Zealand has withdrawn stocks of GTA 5 along with other R-rated games. For those who don't know, the R18 rating in Australia is strictly legally enforceable and prevents the sale of any of these titles to a minor. So these games can legally only be sold to adults. Okay, this is a complicated issue, but let's get into it. Let's start with their media release, shall we? And as far as I'm concerned, the obvious hypocrisy of it and, indeed, the cowardice. So a company has the right, of course, to withdraw any product from sale for any reason. They don't need to explain it. That is their fundamental right. It's also, of course, the fundamental right of the consumer to complain one way or the other. So no one's tossing any of that out of the window. However, let's look at this statement. We've been speaking to many customers over recent days about the game. Well, I'm not exactly sure what method they used to do so. It would appear that the primary reason for the removal of this game was an online petition that was started by 3 alleged sex workers. The petition is sensationalist, to say the least. It begins with a picture of a dead woman on the ground and an axe covered in blood to the bottom right of the screen. It says, "Withdraw Grand Theft Auto 5. This sickening game encourages players to commit sexual violence and kill women." What does that remind you of? Oh dear, this whole ban this sick filth thing. If you're from the UK, you are aware of this particular brand of yellow journalism, or in this case, what we have, of course, is supposedly a consumer-led petition. Although one has to wonder if this is a petition from consumers at all. Whatever the case, it doesn't really matter. They have the right to set up a petition. But it immediately begins with a questionable statement, to say the least. It's a game that encourages players to murder women for entertainment. The incentive is to commit sexual violence against women, then abuse them or kill them to proceed or get health points. This doesn't really make a great deal of sense. The game does not, in fact, encourage you to commit sexual violence against women, nor is it part of the main plot. Indeed, a bit of a spoiler here, but in the main plot, only 2 women actually die in Grand Theft Auto 5, as opposed to countless number of male characters, including those who are beforehand tortured in a rather graphic way. It is true that you can increase your health points by having sex with prostitutes. It is not true that you can abuse or kill them in order to get health points. That is not, in fact, true at all. It is possible to kill them, like every other character in the game. The game is very equal opportunities when it comes to allowing you to kill, including innocent bystanders. This is, after all, a game about crime and gives you the ability to go on a rampage whenever you damn well please. Admittedly, there are consequences to doing so because it will attract the attention of the police, which will usually involve your arrest and or death. So I'm not really sure what the incentive is to commit sexual violence in this game. I mean, that would imply sexual assault and or rape, neither of which is something that the player can actually do. The sex that you have in Grand Theft Auto is both consensual and, in the case of sex workers, paid for as a service. Indeed, there doesn't appear to be any evidence whatsoever that there is sexual violence within Grand Theft Auto 5. Indeed, games in Australia are forbidden to feature sexual violence at all under Australian law. So if the game did indeed feature sexual violence, it would not have been allowed to be sold in the first place. These laws go even further, by the way. Games in Australia are not permitted to feature implied sexual violence that is related to incentives or rewards. Games that do so are refused classification. As you are probably aware, the Classification Board of Australia took a good long look at Grand Theft Auto 5 and classified it R18+. The Classification Board of Australia does not believe that there is any implied or expressed sexual violence to be found within Grand Theft Auto 5. Otherwise, it would have never classified it in the first place. The petition goes on to say that Target are stocking it and promoting it for your Christmas stocking. Now, of course, that would imply that this was being sold to minors, or at least being advertised as a product for minors, which is clearly not true, since it is illegal to sell these games to minors, and it's clearly displayed on the front of the box that this is a game for 18+ only. That said, I will actually agree to some extent with this petition because Target were stupid enough to put Grand Theft Auto 5 on a flyer alongside other toys in the toy section. No, I'm kidding you not. Have a picture of an ad from a magazine that says the best toy prices in Australia guaranteed, 60% off Spider-Man, Goblin Attack, or Barbie Hair-tastic dolls, 30% off all Peppa Pig, $64 each for Grand Theft Auto 5. Admittedly, it also has the R18+ sticker on it, which is why I'm a little confused that they put it in the toy section. One would presume that they don't put Game of Thrones or 50 Shades of Grey in the toy section. Some people are a little silly when it comes to the definition of video games. Still in 2014, if you can actually believe that. So we go on to the next paragraph of this petition. This is Grand Theft Auto 5. This game means that after various sex acts, players are given options to kill women by punching her unconscious, killing her with a machete, bat, or guns to get their money returned. Yes, they are also given the option to kill literally anybody else in the game in order to take money from them. This is not a feature that is unique to women or sex workers in the game in any way, shape, or form. If you kill a civilian, you can loot money from them. Now, I'm not really sure what they're trying to accomplish here. Are women supposed to be a protected class in video games? Because they really already are. Which actually is quite unfortunate because it does result in more limited narratives. Indeed, we still have this as a problem in mainstream media. The idea that if a woman dies, it should be tragic. The idea if a man dies, well, they're expendable. That doesn't really matter too much. That's an attitude that has infiltrated all forms of media, which is, again, unfortunate because it limits the creativity of the artist. If we believe that men and women are equal, which we hopefully do, then one would imagine that the same kind of consequences should be inflicted regardless of gender. GTA 5 allows for that because it is a chaotic sandbox fantasy. It is fiction, and it is a game in which you are playing psychotic criminals. Such is to be expected. Now, if we head on in the petition, they link a fan clip, which shows the woman being run down, run over, set light, still screaming, and repeatedly shot. Which, of course, is something that you can do to any character in the game, regardless of gender. They say this misogynistic GTA 5 literally makes a game of bashing, killing, and horrific violence against women. Well, it makes a game of bashing, killing, and horrific violence against anybody. It also links sexual arousal and violence, the petition claims. A citation needed on that one. That reminds me of one of the more questionable clips that I found in an Anita Sarkeesian video. It was a clip in which she decided, within the strip club level of Hitman Absolution, to kill 2 strippers and then drag them around for some reason. Of course, the bodies were affected by the Havoc physics engine, as are all bodies in the game, and they were sort of put into splayed positions, which I suppose one could interpret as being sexual. However, of course, we all know how the Havoc physics engine works, and limbs just have a tendency of going everywhere. To quote directly from her transcript, she claimed that this was a rush streaming from a carefully concocted mix of sexual arousal connected to the act of controlling and punishing representations of female sexuality. She goes on to claim that the in-game consequences for doing so are trivial at best, and rarely lead to any sort of fail state or game over. This is true, but the in-game consequences for murdering civilians within Hitman Absolution are not particularly punishing, deliberately so, regardless of gender. So that doesn't really seem to be all that relevant, and frankly, the sentence prior to that really does need a bit of citation. I mean, controlling and punishing representations of female sexuality, a carefully concocted mix of sexual arousal, it's a rush, is it? I mean, based on what? Authorial intent? Scientific studies? I'm frequently very wary when I read lines like that because they sound very scientific, but they're also very authoritative. and yet don't seem to be backed up by any scientific evidence, or even necessarily academic theory. Is a game misogynistic because it allows you to kill women? That is an extremely tenuous statement. The final tenuous statement on this matter goes something like this. Games like this are grooming yet another generation of boys to tolerate violence against women. It is fueling the epidemic of violence experienced by so many girls and women in Australia and globally. Citation needed. Not only does this make no factual sense, it claims it's grooming yet another generation of boys. This game is R18 rated, it is designed for adults. It is legally only to be sold to adults, and if kids are getting hold of it, one has to put the blame on one group and one group alone, and that is the parents for allowing it to do so. I have an 11-year-old son myself, and frankly, I'm very glad to live in a world where we have the best and most reliable parental controls on our devices these days. It is so easy to stop my kid from playing games that I don't want him to play. It's incredibly easy, much easier than it was back when I was a kid, and yet my parents managed to stop me from playing games that they didn't want me to play either. Even though they didn't have all these advanced, hard-coded child lock functions, where every game has an age rating burned into it, and the console can actually detect what the age rating is and prevent somebody from playing it who isn't of the appropriate age. You can prevent games of certain age ratings from even being downloaded in the first place by people that are not of the appropriate age. It's a pretty good time to be a parent, honestly, if you want to prevent them from seeing certain kinds of media. You have many ways to do so. Companies listen to these concerns, and they did put these systems into place. So I would suggest using them. And again, for the rest of the sentence, it is fueling the epidemic of violence experienced by so many women and girls in Australia. Citation needed. Where is the evidence to prove that? Let's go back to Target's statement regarding other R-rated DVDs and games. While these products often contain imagery that some customers find offensive, in the vast majority of cases we believe they are appropriate products for us to sell to adult customers. That's the thing, isn't it? Adult customers. Adult customers who should be able to make their own choices when it comes to the entertainment that they consume. Like, say, Game of Thrones, for instance, a series which is, of course, on sale from Target, which contains so many scenes of violence, both sexual and non-sexual. But I suppose because it's not a video game, it's totally fine, right? We've heard this before. This has been going on for decades. Video games are the scapegoat of the modern era. Previously, it was comic books, rock and roll, heavy metal, Dungeons and Dragons, films, and of course, in many cases, books. I would not like to go back to a time where we were burning books. This is sensationalism, and little more than that. It's based on a fundamental lack of understanding of game mechanics, the idea that just because a game allows you to do something doesn't mean that it inherently endorses you doing something. At no point during the main campaign missions of any Grand Theft Auto title are you told to go and kill hookers. It does not happen. The killing of a sex worker in Grand Theft Auto has the same consequence to the killing of any other civilian. There is complete equality in that regard, and you could disagree that a game should be allowed to show the killing of innocents. But there's a good way to avoid that, and that's not to play it, not to buy it. The petition in particular mentioned the idea of this being triggering to those that had suffered violence. And of course, it is abhorrent that these women have suffered sexual violence, and by being a sex worker, it is certainly by no means an excuse to perpetrate sexual violence. And I certainly believe that let's get political here for a second. The sex industry should be legalized across the board to make it safer for those working in it. It should be properly decriminalized, and the correct amount of protection and support provided for those women who choose to get involved in that line of work. There's a little bit of politics, but the fact of the matter is, you do not have to play this game. Seeing the box art is not triggering you to do anything. I'm not offended by what other people watch. An example, I'm currently going through treatment for cancer. If someone makes a cancer joke, that's not something that really offends me, of course, unless it was directed at me. If there are particular shows that are dealing with cancer one way or the other, maybe it's respectful, maybe it's not, I can choose not to watch those shows. I do not demand those shows be pulled. And of course, we have to get onto the obvious point that we are talking about a work of fiction. Is the GTA 5 world unpleasant? Absolutely. It is designed in such a way. It is frequently satirical, but of course, it is one of the nastiest games that you could play. But you go into it with full knowledge of that. There is no attempt to trick you into believing that Grand Theft Auto is anything else I do not watch Game of Thrones with the expectation that we're going to be going on a happy-go-lucky fantasy adventure. It is not Narnia. I do not watch Sons of Anarchy because it is the joyful adventures of a motorcycle club. As an adult, I have the freedom to choose which media I consume. I would at no point ever attempt to remove the choices of adults, even if it just happened to be at a particular store. Because again, where does that end? You might claim slippery slope, we're not coming for your video games, is the cry that we sometimes hear. Well, when people celebrate the removal of a piece of art, whether or not you like it is irrelevant, it is a piece of art regardless, from sale from a store by people who frankly are not playing it in the first place, then one has to wonder, what exactly is your end game? If your end game is to improve the representation of women in media, this is not the way to go about it. I fully agree that we should have a proper female protagonist in GTA 5. That would be great. I would love to see that, because I think it gives a fundamentally different spin on the idea of crime. Crime is extremely interesting to many people. It's the forbidden fruit. It's something that we don't want to get involved in, but we like to dabble in the fantasy of it. Similar to 50 Shades of Grey. Of course, women would not like to be raped, and yet some of them choose to indulge in the fantasy of it by reading a book such as 50 Shades of Grey. Is that a book that I like? Absolutely not. I think it gives a very, very unhealthy view of BDSM. It gives an absolutely terrible view of consent, but at the end of the day, it is a work of fiction, and adults can choose whether or not they wish to consume it. Is this censorship? Well, I see a lot of people running back to the dictionary every time we get into arguments like this, like, hey, it's not censorship, or by this particular dictionary definition of the word. I do not agree that censorship is only perpetrated by the state. I think that is frankly absolute nonsense. But honestly, whether or not it is censorship, and you could quibble about this till the end of time, it really does not matter. What has happened is this. A petition that makes several misleading statements has resulted in the removal of the choice of adults to purchase a piece of media from a particular retailer. And that is no doubt going to spread. It already has to stores in New Zealand, and of course to Kmart, which is owned by the same holding company as Target Australia. It is removing consumer choice. And of course it is the demonization of a piece of media based on misleading information, and I do not approve of that. Again, if you wish to improve the representation of women in gaming, I'm all for that. It's not too bad in its current state, but it could be better. And you attract more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. We saw similar complaints regarding God of War 3, in which there was some backlash about the fact that you could kill innocent women as much as you could kill innocent men. In God of War Ascension, they prevented you from doing so. They decided to pull back from that. I find the idea to be contradictory to the notion of equality. I find the attitude to be frankly infantilizing towards women. And needless to say, I also find it insulting to the writers and the game developers who are unnecessarily restricted for really no apparent reason from fulfilling what their artistic vision may actually be. And let's be frank, Kratos is a murderer. He is not going to distinguish based on gender. Naturally, of course, even with this stance, God of War Ascension, the follow-up game, did not escape the same criticism. So one has to really wonder what it takes in order to reach a point where people are happy with everything. And the answer, of course, to that is, well, never. In my opinion, this is ultimately going to backfire. This has happened time and time again when it comes to Grand Theft Auto. Now the attention has shifted to something a little bit more specific, the idea of misogyny as opposed to simple violence. We've had plenty of drama and plenty of controversy surrounding the Grand Theft Auto series. The series feeds on it, and it is a bestseller, multi-award-winning title. That is not going to change. It is one of the most popular game franchises in the world, with sales that eclipse major Hollywood pictures. Now, of course, these women have the right to petition whoever they please. They can act as consumers. They can boycott. They are allowed to do so, but simultaneously, consumers are allowed to push back against that very thing. Such is the nature of freedom of speech, and I would encourage those that believe that this was the wrong decision to speak out about it, to email Target, to have discussions online, to sign petitions, since they're evidently effective. I think this is one of the first times I've actually seen an online petition do anything, which I think was more surprising to me than the game actually getting removed from sale. But frankly, I find myself disgusted by those that are applauding it. I understand the idea of defending the decision based on the fact that they have the right to do so. You are absolutely 100% correct. They can do whatever they like. They are a company. They can remove sale for whatever reason. But there's a difference between supporting the right to do it and the belief that it is right to do it. And lauding the idea that a piece of art should be removed from sale is something that the games media, frankly, should never be taking a part in. That is the most anti-consumer nonsense, and it seems like some, thankfully not too many, but some sites have forgotten what it means to be pro-consumer these days. It wasn't so long ago when these sites were having to defend us from the mainstream media, who wanted nothing more than to demonize video games, the latest scapegoat for the in-depth and deeply rooted problems of society. Well, some of them forgot how to do that, it seems. How disappointing. Alright folks, that wraps me up for the day. Thank you very much for watching the content patch, but before I go, I'd like to give you the OC Remix track of the day. After such heavy subject matter, let's cheer ourselves up a little bit with something from Spyro Year of the Dragon. It came out in the year 2000 on the PlayStation 1. The remixer for this is Arceace, and it was originally composed by Ryan Beveridge and Stuart Copeland. This song is Midday Gardens, and the name of the remix is The Acoustic Fields. Download it for free in the description below this video, and I'll see you next time.